Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Farming Week, the podcast from Agriland that keeps you up to date with everything that's happening in Irish agriculture. I'm Francess McDonnell and I'm going to be joined in a little while by my colleagues Aisling O'Brien and Breifne O'Brien. But first, wherever you are in the country, it's likely that you're going to be battling grey skies and according to the latest status yellow weather warning from Met Éireann, significant rainfall in some parts for the next couple of days. Met Éireann is warning that most places will see between 25 to 60 millimetres of rain over the coming week, which is equivalent to between 1.5 and 4 times the average rainfall for this time of year. So you may possibly have to postpone some of your plans for the farm ahead of Easter. Separately this week, we've also been reporting on why there are still, in places, dark clouds hanging over the Agri-Climate Rural Environmental Scheme, better known, of course, to us all as ACRES. Aisling, you caught up with the Minister of State at the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine, Michael Healy-Rae, and what did he tell you about the latest state of play with ACRES?
Yeah, so Minister Healy-Rae told me when I met him here in Kerry during the week, Francis, that the scoring system for the agri-environmental scheme may have to be overhauled in his opinion. Now, of course, we know there's over 50,000 farmers participating in ACRES, but this €1.5 billion flagship agri-environmental scheme has been the subject of intense criticism, not just from farm organisations, but from politicians and, of course, farmers on the ground as well. And the latest data that we have available to us from the Department of Agriculture is that a total of just over €448 million had been paid out to ACRES participants by Monday of this week, April 14th. Now, of that total, just over 200 million is in respect of participation in the scheme in 2024, while 247.8 million relates to participation in 2023. So advance payments for scheme participation in 2024 still have to be made to 7,660 ACRES participants across tranches 1 and 2. And of those participants, 1,850 are also awaiting their balancing payment in respect of 2023, because that has to be actually paid before the 2024 advance payment can be made to them. Now, advance payments in respect of 2024 participation were made on April 14th to 845 participants, and that pay run, that was about €3.7 million. That brought the total 2024 ACRES advanced payment to just over €200 million to 46,500 odd farmers in respect of their participation in the scheme for 2024. But I suppose if we look to 2023, there is a total of 1,850 farmers that yet have to receive their final payments for that year's participation. And of those, 1,556 have already received an interim payment. That's those payments of either €4,000 or €5,000, depending on what stream of acres that you're involved in. And the department said in many instances that would actually cover the entire payment due to those farmers. But I suppose the aside from that then is we have spoken about overpayments and that clawback issue that's going on as well as another facet to the acres drama as well. So I suppose that there was balancing payments made in relation to people who participated in the scheme in 2023 between the end of March and April 2nd. And it was about 400 participants who got a total of just over €250,000. And that means that now the people who've participated in ACRES in 2023 have been paid a total of €247.8 million. That's just over 43,000 participants, or 96% of all ACRES participants, we were told. And the department said that the processing of all of the cases will continue and payment runs will be made every 3 weeks to those participants whose contracts have been cleared during the period. But as I said, and as you mentioned at the top of the podcast there, Minister Michael Healy-Rae has told us this week in Agriland that lessons have to be learned from what has happened with ACRES and with the payments around this scheme. And he said since 2023, we actually have farmers who are waiting, and they'll have to maybe wait until the end of May or maybe even the end of June for a payment. And he said that his colleague in the department, Minister for Agriculture, Martin Hayden, has been diligent about trying to get all of those remaining people paid. But what we have to do, he said, is ensure that it doesn't happen again. And he said the scoring for ACRES If there has to be a complete overhaul of it, well and good. And he said the department has to realise that it's not fair on people to have their payments held up, and in his words, held up through no fault whatsoever of their own, and for it to be what he would call their fault, as in the minister's fault. And he said that's not acceptable. And he said it's happened now, but it can't happen again. And he said we can't have a situation, for example, maybe if you look ahead to the middle of 2027, where that we're still owing people money from 2025. He just said that's not on. And here's some more of what he had to say in terms of maybe what people in other sectors would react to this debacle.
No other worker in any sector in Ireland would say, all right, I'll have to wait 2 or 2.5 years for my money. That's not right. And whatever mistakes, whatever has gone wrong, whatever way the scoring for acres is so problematic that they can't literally get people paid. Well, if it's wrong, it has to be overhauled. And it obviously is wrong.
So that's Minister of State of the Department of Agriculture, Michael Healy-Rae there, Francis. I suppose saying that the situation, we really have to learn huge lessons from it. And maybe it is a case that we have to go back to the drawing board a little bit with acres and how we are scoring on the ground. And look, there's a range of different issues that the department have said are delaying payments. We've listed them on our story and you can have a read of those as well. But I know it has caused so much frustration for farmers all around the country, and these delayed payments in some cases 2.5 years, as the minister said, they're waiting. And it's just unfair for some farmers.
I was just going to say, actually, no, quite a significant departure for a minister to signal this about acres.
Yes, Francis. I suppose, to be fair to Minister Martin Hayden, he has previously said he wants to restore confidence in acres, and he has really, I suppose, put an urgency on getting these payments made to farmers. And he has said previously that, the end of May, end of June at the very latest, that he wants to see that backlog cleared. But I think when Minister Healy-Rae was talking about the scoring system and maybe having a look at that and going back to the drawing board, that is very, very interesting. And, obviously advisors across the country will be keeping a close eye on that, because that scoring system is what they work off of in order to get people paid. Obviously, it's a results-based scheme, and it is a departure under the new cap. This type of approach, we would have seen it on a smaller scale, maybe in EIP projects around the country. But I suppose this is on a very grand scale when you're talking about around 50,000 farmers participating.
Certainly is, Aisling. And we're going to move on now, and I'm joined by my colleague Breifne O'Brien, who's Agriland's technical beef specialist. And he's going to tell us all about the final details of the new beef welfare scheme, which have just been confirmed.
Yes, Francis. So there's some good news for suckler farmers today, with the final details of increased support payments for suckler herds. So the final details on the new beef welfare scheme for suckler farmers have been confirmed following a meeting with farm lobby groups and the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine on Thursday, April 17th. So some of the key changes to the 2025 suckler beef welfare scheme are as follows. The maximum number of suckler weanlings eligible has increased from 40 to 45 head. The maximum payment has increased from €50 per weanling last year to €75 per weanling for this year. So there are 3 categories in the new scheme. Category A is mandatory and offers applicants a payment of €35 per eligible calf for meal feeding. Category B is optional and offers a €15 per calf payment for clostridial or respiratory vaccination. And this year there's a third optional measure offering a payment for either silage sampling or fecal egg sampling. The scheme is worth €75 per weanling, or €3,375 per herd, where all measures are availed of for the maximum eligible number of 45 calves. So the IFA Livestock Chair Declan Hanrahan has encouraged farmers to avail of the initiative and said the scheme is expected to be opened in August of this year, with scheme measures to be completed by October 17th of this year. And of course, more information on the scheme can be found on the Agriland News app.
And just staying with you, Breifne, new figures show the total number of cattle in the country has fallen by over 400,000 head in the past 24 months. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yes, Francis, that's right. So the total number of cattle in Ireland has fallen by over 400,000 head. That's in the past 2 years, according to the latest national herd statistics. So them statistics are from the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine. And as of March 1st, 2025, there were 3.84 million beef-sired animals and 2.86 million dairy-sired animals in the country, totaling just under 6.7 million cattle in the country. On March 1st, 2023, the total cattle population was 7.1 million, which was almost 115,000 head above the same date of 2024 and 403,000 head above March 2025. So the department figures break down cattle numbers by age, gender, and the number of cows for both beef and dairy cattle. So on March 1st, 2025, there were approximately 740 suckler cows and 1.58 million dairy cows in the country. So looking at them numbers, suckler cow numbers are down 93,000 head from March 1st, 2023, and dairy cow numbers are down by over 65,000 head in the same time frame. So as of March 1st, 2025, there were more beef sired calves than dairy sired calves in the country. The number of beef sired calves below 3 months of age totaled just under 530,000 head, and the number of dairy sired calves totaled just over 408,000 head. Of these dairy sired calves, 148,000 are male and 260,000 are female.
So interesting statistics there, Breifne, on the latest picture. But what's also been happening to the number of cattle that have passed through the country's marts in the first quarter of the year?
Yeah, so the latest figures from the department again show that over 574,000 cattle passed through the country's marts in the first quarter of 2025. So cattle sales at marts in the first quarter of this year are up 60,500 head when compared with the first 3 months of 2024. Now, these figures do include calf sales as well. The data shows that just over 10,000 cattle went unsold at marts in the first quarter of this year and were returned home during the period. So that's around half of the corresponding figure for the first quarter of 2024. And of course, the strong cattle trade we're currently seeing in the marts was certainly a help in reducing that figure by half.
Thanks, Breifne. And now, Aisling, you're back with me again because we're going to look now at why it appears the US market just can't get enough of one particular export from Ireland. What is that?
Kerrygold butter, unsurprisingly, Francis. We've obviously been discussing over the past few weeks and months the moves across the Atlantic when it comes to tariffs from the new administration in the White House and their implications on our agri-food sector, particularly when it comes to butter, such as Kerrygold and whiskey. So this week, Ornua, which of course owns the Kerrygold butter brand, published its 2024 annual report. We'll come back to some of the financials from that report in just a bit. But just on Kerrygold, as you said, it ended 2024 as the number 2 block butter brand in the US, and it was the fastest growing brand in that category. Now, Conor Galvin, the chief executive of Ornua, spoke to Agriland this week, and he said that the brand has been almost a victim of its own success in the US because the demand for the product continues to consume the stock that has been supplied into the market. And obviously, there's only a certain window every year where we can make this butter in Ireland and ship it across over to the United States. And Conor Galvin said that against the backdrop of the ongoing concerns about the impact of US tariffs on Irish businesses, Ornua is in a position of strength and stability, in his words. And he said the immediate key challenge for Ornua is the uncertainty in global markets because of the ongoing debate over what President Trump will do next. I think not even Mystic Meg would know that from 1 minute to the next. And obviously these tariffs have been paused. There is a 10% blanket tariff that's there at the moment, but the reciprocal tariffs, these higher tariffs that were threatened, there's a pause on that for 90 days at the moment. And obviously there is negotiations going on between the US and the European Commission and other nations across the world as well. So Conor Galvin said because of, I suppose, the production profile when it comes to making Kerrygold butter, everything that Ornua actually had available for the US had been moved before the end of last year. So now they're in a position where the US has actually consumed a lot of that product already, everything that kind of went in ahead of these tariffs coming in. So the new season has now started. Spring calving has come to an end on the majority of farms out there, in Kerrygold Park, which is the home of Kerrygold butter production, is at full capacity producing the 2025 butter that will be going over to the US. And Conor Galvin said, we're placing it into the US. We had a normal level of stock in the US because of the sales rate going so strong before the 10% tariff landed. And he said, we'll just continue to move product into the US as normal. But it just shows the voracious appetite people have over in the US for Kerrygold butter. I mean, mean, we've always known it's a great product, but they've obviously cottoned onto it as well. And I suppose Conor Galvin did point to that in his interview with Agriland, saying obviously the US is a very important market, but there's other markets as well. Of course, in Europe, Germany for generations has loved Kerrygold butter. It's very popular over there as well. So there's other markets that Kerrygold has a very strong position in as well. And look, before we leave Ornua, just to touch on the financials from that 2024 report. So we did see a slight dip in group turnover for last year to 3.4 billion euro, but an almost 12% jump in operating profit. Group turnover slipped back year on year by 0.2%, while operating profit grew to 130.5 million euro. And Ornua's group earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation and amortization, of course EBITDA, also increased by 10.5% to 165.5 million euro. So I suppose a strong trading performance given a difficult year in 2024, and Ornua did acknowledge that in terms of how difficult it was for farmers as well, particularly in the early months of 2024, battling against very tricky weather conditions.
I think my favourite line out of the Ornua financial results this year was that they disclosed that 12 million retail packs of Kerrygold butter and cheese are sold globally every week.
Yeah, it's such a huge success story. And I think that's why, the government and everybody had to respond so quickly and diligently when, the threat of tariffs or anything that could, I suppose, derail that or harm it in any way, particularly when it comes to the US market, Francis. It just shows the impetus to protect that. And of course, obviously, Ornua is kind of an umbrella co-op for a load of other members, and it goes the whole way down to the farmers on the ground who are producing the milk and, need to get paid at the end of the day. So it is very, very important that we protect a very precious export, and it's a very important one.
Yeah, and that wasn't the only dairy news that we've been covering this week, Aisling.
Yeah, so a couple of milk price announcements in the past week, Francis, since we last spoke on the podcast for March milk supplies. Of course, we've had announcements from Lakeland Dairies, Dairygold, and from Kerry Dairy Ireland as well. If you want to find out more about those, check out all the announcements on our app and website. And then, of course, on Tuesday, we had the latest Global Dairy Trade, the GDT trading event. And the result of that saw the GDT index gaining again, another gain, which is positive to see in terms of global dairy markets. And it increased by 1.6%. And it means that the GDT index is now at its highest level since July 2022. So that is a good sign on the global dairy markets. And long may it continue.
Yeah, and dairy farmers may also be interested to know that DAFM is currently in the process of identifying farmers who'll have to move to the lower nitrates derogation stocking rate of 220 kg livestock manure nitrogen per hectare from December this year. And you can find out more about that story on Agriland.ie or on our app. But for the moment, let's just stay with the environment, because when it comes to climate and what may be in the pipeline for farmers this year, a really important document was published this week. Aisling, what's in it?
So this is the Climate Action Plan 2025. Obviously, a very broad document looking at all sectors of the economy. But I suppose from an agricultural point of view, the document acknowledges that 2023 agri emissions decreased by 4.6% compared to 2022. But the report also warned that this needs to continue and to accelerate to meet the target of a 25% emissions reduction by the end of this decade. And the plan also points to the fact that much of the reduction in emissions since 2021 can be attributed to the drop in nitrogen fertilizer purchased by farmers. And it also noted that the total cattle herd reduced in 2023 by 1%. Now, it said that there has been a substantial uptake of organic farming, with 5,000 farmers now farming organically in Ireland. And it also pointed to the National Biomethane Strategy, the Organic Farming Scheme, and the Forestry Strategy as having significant potential to create opportunities for Irish farmers to diversify their farming enterprises as well. Now, there are a number of key targets identified in the Climate Action Plan, and these include reducing chemical nitrogen use to a maximum of 300,000 tonnes and earlier finishing of beef cattle as well. Other key targets include improved animal breeding by focusing on low methane traits and low emission animal feeding. And just, I suppose, to list some of the actions in the plan, you can read all about it on our website and app, but some of them, I suppose, might be familiar, and there's work underway or ongoing on some of these already, Frances. But one of them is to develop an action plan on reducing the age of slaughter, as I just said there. I suppose we're looking at 3 to 3.5 months reduced finishing age there. Reducing the maximum allowable crude protein and concentrates fed to adult cattle at grass to 14% between April 15th and September 30th. It also calls for research to continue on greenhouse gas reducing feed ingredients, which are under development at the moment for pasture-based systems, including methods of administering those ingredients as well while at pasture. And it said we also need to begin consideration of options and issues relating to the eventual use of approved feed additives and ingredients by farmers. Now, it also calls for progress on the carbon farming framework consultation process and doubling the area devoted to organic crops and vegetables to 14,000 hectares by the end of the decade as well. Now, we have to note as well, there is another very important sector when it comes to agriculture, and that is land use change and forestry. That's LULUCF, as some people will call it as well. And the action plan notes that this sector will continue to be a source of emissions out to 2030. Now, the plan has a number of key actions which it intends to roll out this year for the LULUCF sector. And those include launching complementary actions this year under the Acres cooperation projects, all aimed at a reduction in land use emissions. And they also want us to review progress towards 2030 of an additional 30,000 hectares of peatland rehabilitation and to explore potential to increase that target as well. And I suppose looking at acres specifically as well and how it might apply to farms and peat soil, the plan says following on from approximately 180,000 hectares of privately owned peatland being scored for habitat quality and a further 420,000 hectares of commonage being scored under acres, further complementary actions will be made available this year, which will actively facilitate blocking peat drains where that is appropriate and ultimately led by farmers' willingness to engage. So that is very interesting. And also the plan says that it wants the government to engage and to support the work of Peatland Finance Ireland to attract finance to peatland restoration activities through the development of a peatland standard for Ireland. So, there's a lot in the report, Frances, a lot to go through. So I think, it will be digested by the farm organisations in the coming days ahead, and no doubt we'll be seeing some more reaction to those key actions that have been outlined for this year and beyond.
Yeah, there's 166 pages roughly in that report. And of course, as we always say, the devil is in the detail when it comes to these reports. And some of the more sort of extensive details are going to be, I would say, sort of as you say, it's going to be very carefully looked at this week. And I know that we'll probably see maybe some concerns raised by farm organisations, because obviously these are just black and white actions, but actually the method and how those actions are going to be achieved hasn't really been detailed yet.
And I suppose maybe when it comes to the acres scheme, kind of doubling back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier as well, maybe some people would say maybe acres has enough complications at the moment rather than adding something else to it. And maybe we should sort out what's going on with acres first before adding another layer if that is involving some sort of peatland restoration as well. So we'll have to see, as you say, how the farm organisations react to this.
And one other development that we have reported on this week is that Teagasc have confirmed the first reported case of a field population of the grass weed Italian ryegrass that has proven resistant to glyphosate. Italian ryegrass is already a major challenge on some tillage farms, and this is the first confirmed case in Ireland in more than 50 years. And moving on now, we just wanted to tell you about some sightings that have been recorded, which may be of interest to some farmers who are quite keen bird watchers. Ashlyn, what's the story there?
Well, it's the cuckoo that has returned. That very enigmatic call of the cuckoo has been heard because we've 3 sightings of cuckoos reported to Irish birding so far this year. And several corncrakes as well have been spotted as these migratory birds make their way home to Ireland this spring. So the first cuckoo was sighted on March 24th at Helvick Head in County Waterford by observer Fran O'Connell. And then 2 cuckoos were sighted on April 2nd. One at Ballygunner Moor in County Waterford by Vera Roach, and the second was observed by Tim and Michael O'Halloran in Lixna down here in County Kerry. Now, the cuckoo sighted in Kerry actually involved a rare female, and it's a Rufus morph. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. My bird skills mightn't be as keen as they are from the people who have spotted these incredible birds returning. And I'm always amazed, Frances. You look at a bird, it's so small, and we'll see the return of the swallows and the swifts and everything, and how they can make their way around the planet and then come back to Ireland for the warmer months and enjoy their time here. I'm always astonished, but I know that many people out there are very keen bird watchers on their farms. And yeah, and along with the cuckoo, several corncrakes, as I said, they've already landed in Ireland, and the first bird was spotted by the team based in County Donegal who are attached to the EU Life Project, the Corncrake Life Project. And the project members are hopeful to retain numbers from last year when 233 calling male territories were recorded. And the corncrakes, of course, they winter in sub-Saharan Africa, and mostly in southeastern countries there, South Africa, Zimbabwe, Zambia and Tanzania. And then they make their way back to the likes of County Donegal for their summer holidays. And we're delighted to have them and more of them. And hopefully that the numbers will go up this year. But great to see it. And long may it continue over the coming weeks ahead. I know that, as I said, many people, very keen bird watchers on their farms, and love to hear and see those birds returning every single year.
And unfortunately, that's it for this week's podcast. So for now, from Aisling, Breifne and myself, thanks for listening. Please don't forget to rate, review and follow The Farming Week on Spotify, Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. We hope you have a really good week ahead.